Thank you, Sean. And thank you, Scott, for the opportunity to be here and to do what we do best and what we love best, which is designing great buildings in New England. Firm has been around for close to 50 years, and we're proud of all the work we've done. We approach each new project by looking at the principles, design principles that we'll use in establishing a new project. And in this case, our design principles are really three very simple ones. To minimize impact, to minimize the development's impact on its neighbors and on the site, to embrace the New England aesthetic. It's Scott's challenge to us, and it's a challenge we very happily undertake. And third, to engage the natural landscape. As you saw from Sean's analysis, only about 10% of the site will be covered by buildings. The other 90% will be developed and available for amenity use on the site. So very quickly to recap, then to minimize the development impact, the site is 187 acres. This is a graphic that shows that topography, the rugged terrain that Sean talked about. Here at the south end, fairly low. Coming up, this little graphic here shows the darkest green is the lowest area, and the brightest purple is the highest area. So you have a kind of plateau area in here. You have a wetland running down through it. You have another plateau area over here. And there's some highland, of course, across the way. You might have seen a helicopter flying around 2, 3, 4 weeks ago and hovering low. That was us. We were out reconnaissance tour to have a look at the site and see what it looks like from the air and see how all the pieces are related. And this is what we found. From the air, 495 is one of the most dominant features near the site. The site itself, however, is second growth hardwood forest. There's a maintained clearing here under the power lines. You don't actually see the power lines. The reason you know they're there is because the ground is cleared underneath them. Across the way in the commercial industrial zone, you have a lot of very large rooftops. This is maybe 100,000 square feet here. You have a lot of open parking areas. In general, this kind of development is more like 50 or 60% impervious, where what we're talking about is more like 20 or 25% impervious. We also saw the town of Milford, compact development, a quarry nearby, and the nature of residential community down along West Main Street. And we saw the ponds and the wetlands and the vernal pools that Sean is talking about. When we get down on site, we visited the site several times, and over the course of the last 6 weeks, while we've been working intensively, of course, it changed from winter to summer. So we've seen the site in both those conditions, when it's open land and when it's completely closed over. We marveled at the rocky outcrops and the beauty of that terrain. And we also remarked on the way the site has the potential for great recreation land, and we know that just across the border in the Vietnam, and even in parts of this site, there are great mountain biking trails. We know that can be enhanced and added to with recreational, multi-use recreational trails, walking, hiking, strolling, and educational uses. As Sean pointed out, there are really just 2 areas to develop, and that totals 85 acres. And the access to the site proposed here, coming off 495, the CD roads and the road in. This is really, this little traffic circle that's going to be developed is the access to the site. Putting all that together, there were, again, as pointed out, 2 potential areas. What we've said is that this area near the highway and away from the residential development is the best place to develop, and that the other piece will be saved as 20 or 30 acres of managed woodland forest recreation land. So, you saw the program proposed, the 2 phases of the program given in terms of numbers of gaming tables and numbers of hotel rooms and numbers of parking spaces. In this graphic, we're showing it in amount of square footage and the amount of surface area that, of the building, floor area of the building that's dedicated to these uses. And it's really interesting to see that just as Scott said, the gaming piece up here is really not the biggest piece. This is a resort. It's a big hotel. It's a big hotel. It has lots of back-of-house service. It has restaurants and banquet space and lounges and retail and all those businesses that Scott talked about, and of which gaming is part of that business. The second phase, built on the success of the first phase, is that this is a resort that people are going to very much want to come to, and there will be demand for additional hotel rooms. So you can see that the biggest piece of the second phase of development is to double the size of the hotel and to add a little bit to the gaming because it's been successful, to certainly add to the banquets and the restaurant space because more people coming to stay for longer periods of time is more success. Could point out also that people who come and stay for a while don't add to traffic. They only come once and they only go once. Now, if we take that square footage and we spread it out evenly, one on, like spreading it all out on a football field, it looks like this, which is actually more like 10 football fields. But that's not our intention. The intention is to minimize impact, and the way to do that is to bring all of this together and to stack the building up. So the parking garages stack into structured parking. The hotel rooms, the hotel stacks up into 5 or 6 stories. The back-of-house uses and the service facilities get tucked underneath the building. So this compacts the whole thing to this small footprint here. The actual building footprint, as you can see, is about 17 acres, or approximately 9%, a little under 10% of the site. There will be additionally roads, and shown here in the low gray around the bottom, that will also produce some impervious area. That's for the environmentalists something to look at. But the main point is that of the current site now, 10% will have buildings on it. The other 90% of it will be open to the sky, just as it is now. So, summarizing the minimizing the impact, we're well away from the existing residents. We're tucked closer to 495. And down at the bottom are some sections through the site. So you can see here is the residential community, and here are the power lines. And over here, 2,400 feet away, is the resort development. And in between is all of that woodland. And you can see that from down here, you have to look uphill, you look at trees, and if you continued looking that direction, you wouldn't see the casino. So we'll get to that in a little minute, too. The second of our guiding principles was to embrace the New England design aesthetic. And we think of this in terms of, first of all, the landscape and the variety, the great variety of New England's landscape, from wetlands to seacoasts to rocky lands to open meadows to wetlands with trails in it to agricultural fields, woodland trails. The whole gamut. And of course, through the seasons, we get the change of colors. Next, we thought about the structures that are built in New England, the covered bridges, the barns, the traditional architecture of the New England states is an architecture produced by flinty craftsmen, really, people who had a minimalist approach to solving problems, who were very good at solving problems. You know, the reason that covered bridges exist, the roof on the bridge was to protect the structure from the weather, and that's why we have covered bridges. The shapes and forms that we use are generally fairly simple geometric forms. And so this inspires us in our architectural design. Another organizing element that we use in towns, in campuses, is the green or the quad or the common. And these come in every different shape and form that you can imagine. I'm reminded of the five-sided common in Cambridge, Massachusetts, to the traditional town greens that you find in small towns throughout the region. Or the college campus, the quad. And the great thing about this is that it's a space that you come to and you can see all the buildings. You can sense how the whole thing goes together from that one space. So that's an inspiration to us. Another is the grand hotels and the way they occupy the lands and the sites where they're located. These are large buildings, but they're kept in scale with their site. And they always have a close relationship in some way to the landscape they occupy. So for instance, you see here, this is clearly oriented to a grand view out across the landscape. Here's one that's in intimate, almost say conversation with the lake in front of it. So there's an intentional relationship between the building and the landscape. Here's the Mount Washington Inn, which of course has that grand relationship not only with the forest but with the hills behind. These buildings often have porches, and one of the reasons for that is that the New England climate, even though we do get heat waves and we do get blizzards, most of the time it's pleasant to be outside. And the porch or the terrace or the colonnade is that kind of space that mediates between inside and outside. So part of our intention is really to celebrate that permeability of the building skin. This resort will not be just inside and it won't be just outside. It'll be a place where you can come and go. Get outside for a walk, come inside for the activities or a meal. The stone walls, stonework in general, is a great New England treasure. As driving around Milford, I've just been astounded at the variety of ways that people have used the local stone for retaining walls, for stairs, for building foundations, for stone walls that separate fields, for edging and paving of every sort and type. And we take great inspiration from that, and we want to build that into the resort in all possible ways. To engage the natural landscape, we've called on the services of a team member. We're a completely integrated team. Sean is a civil engineer. Phil Colleran from CRJA is a landscape architect with long experience. We've all worked together very closely in producing this design, and we owe a lot to CRJA for the landscape design work.
Thank you, David, and thanks to everyone for holding up through all this. It's a lot of information to take in at one time. I'm going to go through the landscape concept, and really we could sum up the overall big picture concept through the landscape here as we're going to create a variety of passive and active spaces that will create memorable experiences to visitors throughout the site. And what that's going to do is that's going to really create a series of landmark environments that are going to be interwoven between the New England landscape and the resort experience. And in doing so with the development, we're going to create an environmentally and culturally significant landscape. In saying that, and before we start a project like this, we always look to the overall site program and what creates the makeup of a project like this. And for this project, we want to embrace the New England aesthetic, and as David mentioned, the town green. It's through the use of the materials that we'll use within the site, bringing in culturally significant spaces such as sculpture parks and performance areas, really tying in the connections to the site back into the town, the community, the resort experience, and creating open space that not only that you can use when you come to the resort, but that will be available for the town. Now, engaging the natural landscape It's very, very important for us to respect the site and respect the New England aesthetic, but also create a program that benefits the community as well as the resort itself. So we're looking at a variety of programmatic elements, both active and passive, that will service a four-season resort and service the community from a four-season aspect. And the community is a big piece for this project. You know, we really care about the community. We really want to integrate and connect back into the community. Certain aspects that we can use in terms of the environmental aspects, which are heavy on this project, are mitigating the wetlands to a point where these could be used from an educational component. The school systems could come in and learn about the overall systems, how they operate within the site. There'll be open space components used as parkland and connections back into the community, as well as event spaces that could be used for weddings and other activities. There could even be space for community farmers markets, but you should really think about the area outside of the resort as a big park that integrates within the resort experience, but the communal experience as well. The vegetation around the site will be set up to kind of choreograph your experience as you enter the site, but also as you move into the site, what we'll do to mitigate the wetlands. The New England forest experience will revegetate large swaths of the site. There'll be formal gardens around the architecture and the surrounding parts of the site. There's also going to be an extensive roof garden, a green roof system, which will help reduce heat mitigation and heat island effect throughout the site and really create a much greener and sustainable project. This aspect of sustainability is very, very important to the team and to the developer and our commitment to the town. And we're going to use state-of-the-art sustainable techniques from everything from advanced stormwater techniques, rain gardens, water collection, really extensive mitigation to the wetlands and respect of the wetlands. In fact, we foresee the wetlands actually working better after the development than they do right now from the ways that we'll mitigate them. You can envision the site itself utilizing these stormwater techniques with the wetland enhancement, the infiltration, rain gardens, all moving in to create a workable environmental system that can be obvious to the users and the community. And from the site plan, we're looking at a variety of active zones, event lawns, sculpture parks, the town green, as David mentioned, the extensive green roof network, but really tying back into the bike trail system, utilizing this in the winter for hiking, snowshoeing, and other activities that may support the communal structure. I'm going to turn it back over to David. He's going to talk a little bit more about the architectural systems.
Thanks, Phil. And the reason these two slides look exactly the same is because they're very similar. Just wanted to point out the building is organized around the gaming in the same way that the buildings on the outside are organized around the town green. And we'll get into that in a minute. Also, very quickly, this is the roadway access into the site, and this is the pedestrian and biking trails that will go throughout the site. This is the organization of the building as we have designed it. Here is the gaming hall. The way the industry works, they like to have all of this in one place. So what we've done is dispersed all of the other activities around it. Here is the main entry to the hotel, and this is retail and eating establishments. Here is a bus drop-off, and near there is the food court. These are the parking garages here buffering the building from the highway. And there is a main entrance into this circulation space from the garages. Here is a sports bar. All of these things look out over the wetland and the landscape, and here more retail opportunities looking out in that direction. Now, when we take that and turn it into an architectural plan, it looks like this, where the parking is here, the gaming is there, The food services are all around the outside. This is the meeting hall, the banquet hall, the main ballroom, and all of these things are related very closely out to the landscape. This is the upper level of the building, and so these are hotel rooms, 5 stories high. There's about 24 rooms in each one of these bars. I should point out that these 3 wrapping around the town green, along with the ballroom and the meeting space and the garages and the gaming hall, that forms, all of that space forms phase 1. These 3 hotel bars along through here and this parking garage form the second phase of the development. Everything I've showed you and everything we've talked about has been both phases together within the design. The building itself will also be highly sustainable. We know that we can do much better than business as usual. We can save a lot of energy to support those cooling loads and to reduce the cooling loads, and we can save a lot of water. This is a very extensive list of all of the potentials for sustainable building design. We'll investigate every one of them as we go through the final design in order to bring energy use down to the very minimum, to reduce water use and therefore to reduce sewer flow. Now, what will it look like? I would like to take you through a series of pictures starting from 495. And this is, as you see, the bridge that will be across 495 to bring traffic into the site. It takes its inspiration from the great parkways of the last 50 or 60 years. This is the entrance drive-in. Once you get to the circle and you turn to enter into the site, we'll have mixed, a curvilinear kind of road that sits comfortably on the landscape, that is tree-lined and has pedestrian paths along it, and fairly minimal signage to indicate the entrance. When you get right to the building, this is the exciting part. This is the view from the town green. It's all of the hotel buildings are, as you can see here, wrapped around it. Here is the food court on this side, the porches and colonnades and loggias along the base of the building looking out to that activity space. Here is the porte cochere, the grand entrance to the hotel. You will have come up the road this way and you'll come drive around the town green, and that's the place to drop off and enter the resort. Closer up, this is the porte cochere in an evening view. It's a very active place. It's the sort of center of activities of the outside of the building where everybody will be coming in. Also around the building, you will see this kind of informal landscape development, places to go for a walk, places to get outside and have some fresh air. And these are the kinds of places and activities that Phil spoke about. Closer into the building is a more manicured landscape, and as you see it from the air, here it is, very simply, the entrance in, the building developed, and a large part of the site undeveloped. It's been a pleasure, Scott.